Okay, we're looking at the Garmin 7600 unit. I guess this is the one that replaces, I think it was a 695 or something like that. It's the newer GPS unit, handheld, that Garmin has just released, or I say just released, they released it last year. So what I'm going to be doing is kind of going through. I'll explain to you what my plan is. Right now, what I'm hoping is that the iPad Mini that I have mounted in the Lockheed it's too small for viewing the text and stuff that I'm trying to read and trying to type into this thing. And so I'm trying to find something that is a little more user friendly as far as flying in the airplane. You know, when it's bumpy and you're trying to type in airport identifiers or you're trying to select things, it just gets really frustrating. Now, this unit is actually smaller than an iPad Mini, but some of the things that I like about it are the fact, for example, if I were to do a direct to and say that I wanted to put something in, I've got a nice big keyboard. If I want to do my numbers, I do them here. So everything is nice big buttons to work with. Now, right now I'm in the demo mode in the thing, so the airplane's actually flying around here. So I'm going to go through some of the things that I've learned how to do and some of the things that I think are already missing from the unit that I really wish were in there. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a direct to, and I'm going to tell this to go back to KOPN, which is Thomaston activate. So you see it works similar to the way a 650 or 750 GTN would work in the panel, which is kind of cool. Now the airplane is turning around to go back because again I've got it in demo mode. I've got weather turned on. It can work with Connects and the wireless. So I've got, I think it's the 502 or whatever, the XM weather Garmin unit that sits up in the window, the portable. So it does have a built-in GPS. I think I read that it has AHRS built in as well, but it actually has to have, and maybe it doesn't have AHRS, but you have to connect it to an external unit or to the Connects thing to get the ADS-B traffic and weather. So it kind of depends on what you're doing as to how you're connecting it, but for the most part, it does everything. It can, I read or saw somewhere that it can only connect to one USB or Bluetooth device at a time. So hopefully that won't cause a problem, but I'm not planning on doing anything on here but connecting the XM weather and the Connects thing. So I'm hoping that it'll work okay. So some of the things you have here, we've got nice big buttons here so I can zoom in and out over here. Now we'll say from the earlier model, the one that's like 5 or 6 years old, I think it was a 696. The scroll and pan and zoom and all was really laggy on it. This one is pretty similar to the iPad Mini. So it does a really good job of moving around and doing everything. I think it has a little slower processor on it because this thing takes a while to paint, and the screen resolution is really bad. I'll say really bad. It's functional, but it is not nearly as clear and crisp as you would get off of the iPad Mini. So the one complaint that I have right out of the box is the fact that this thing cost $1,500 for this unit, plus the subscription to get the updated maps and updated information and stuff. So theoretically you're buying this thing for $1,500 and you're still having to pay this almost pretty much the same amount of money a year to have your updates that you would get out of Garmin Pilot or ForeFlight for that matter. So that's a little bit of a disappointment. The thing is also about 1 inch thick, and if you were to get a case to put your iPad in, the argument about this being more durable than an iPad would go out the window, because if I'm willing to make my iPad 1 inch thick, then it would, serve the same purpose. It is nice having the GPS built into it, and I'll have to look up whether the AHRS is built in or not, because I don't remember. But from that standpoint, this is and the fact that you can only do aviation map stuff on here. You can't go watch a movie or anything. This is a lot less functional, a lot less DPI on your screen, a lot slower CPU, and it costs literally twice as much money. So that standpoint, I'm not real happy with this thing. However, I do like the fact that it's customized and specifically for using in the airplane. So let's take a look at a couple things that I've not been able to find from any other videos. I'm trying to cover an actual review comparing this to an iPad, and I'm comparing it to ForeFlight. I will mention that Garmin Pilot, the last video I did comparing ForeFlight to Garmin Pilot, ForeFlight's had quite a few updates since then. Garmin Pilot has had a few updates since that video, but all of the problems that I had in that video still exist in the latest version. So it's been over a year since I did that video, and nothing really has changed in Garmin Pilot. So I'm pretty disappointed with what Garmin's doing with that product. I don't really understand what their goal is with it anyway. If they're going to come out with something like this and charge twice as much as an iPad, you might as well spend the time trying to make this more functional, because it can use some help as well. So let's take a look at a couple things that are a problem. So the first thing is you'll notice that by me scrolling around, my back button has turned to a return button. That actually just recenters the airplane in the screen, and then I get my back button. All of the functionality that you're looking for, you have to come back to this menu, and there is no other way to get to that menu that I'm aware of other than to hit this back button. Now, if you're in levels deep in the program, you can actually press and hold the back button, and it'll take you all the way back out to this list. But this is where you're going to have to go to do most of what you're doing. Now, the first thing I want to do is I want to look at the flight plan list. You do not have the ability to favorite airports in here, which is a huge disappointment. I fly to a lot of local private strips. Some of them I don't remember the exact abbreviation for. And so in ForeFlight and in Garmin Pilot, when I was testing it, I would favorite those things so that I could get to them quicker. In here, you don't have that capability, but you do have the ability to come into the flight plan list and create a flight plan. The problem with the flight plan list is we're back to 5 years ago in Garmin Pilot, where you don't have the ability to name your flight plans. So all you can do is see your origination and destination, and you don't, unless you remember all that, you're not going to know what trip that was or what airport that is. And so this is really, in my opinion, this is kind of dysfunctional compared to where we are today. So for $1,500, I would really expect to be able to give this a name instead of having to have it look like this. Now, the fact that I also don't have the ability to put in favorite airports, it makes me have to use this. So again, having a name would be nice. You also cannot put a flight plan in here without a origination and destination, because it won't save it. So you have to put both in for this to work. But that's your flight plan list. To create a new one, you just come over here and tell it new flight plan, put in the stuff, and it's pretty straightforward. So I'm not going to get into a lot of detail there. So I'm going to go back over here. Right beside that button, we have active flight plan. So this is where we did our direct to get over to Thomaston. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hit menu, and we're going to come over here to flight plan list, and I'm going to pick 62 Golf Alpha to GA2 and activate it and tell it yes. And so now what we'll do is we'll come back over to the map, and you'll notice that even though I activated that flight plan, if we come back in here to our active flight plan, it still has the direct to in here. This is a bug in their system, I would imagine, because there's other little flaky things that it does that I'll show you here in a second. So here, let's do this. So I am on the map and I'm flying, and I realize there's some bad weather around Thomaston, and I am going to have to shoot an approach into Thomaston. So I'd like to load an approach. Well, you can't do that from the map. What you have to do is press and hold on the return button down here, come back over here to your active flight plan, and then from here I can click the menu and we can tell it that we want to select an approach, and then we just click up here. So this works, similar to the way the 650 or 750 would work. I want to tell it I want to fly it in from Sinfo. And so it gives me all the information here. I'm just going to tell it to activate the approach and click OK. Now, you'll notice if I go back over here to the map, it now shows me that I'm flying to Sinfo, and then I'm flying up. Now, this purple color that keeps coming in here, I don't know if it's doing that because it's refreshing the weather or something, but it constantly keeps flashing that purple color, and I don't really have any explanation for what that is. Anyway, so you'll see that this is giving me most of what I need for this approach. You'll also notice that you can't read a single thing on that chart. The DPI on this thing is really bad. I think it's 640 by 480 or something like that. So you can't, this is just totally, unreadable. So you have to zoom in a little bit to be able to read this. Once you zoom in, it's fine. So it's not, it's not a huge deal. I couldn't read that without my glasses anyway. But you can, get what you want to off of this and, fly the approach that you're trying to fly. So if I want to turn off the chart, I come over here to the menu and I can turn off charts, and that'll get rid of the actual chart, which, if I'm actually flying the approach, I wouldn't do that anyway. And then we also have set this thing in north up so that the chart stays readable. Otherwise it would be upside down or flipped over to the, left or right. So to do that kind of thing, when you're on the map, you can come over here to map and come to, see where it is. Actually, I think I'm trying to remember where you go to set the orientation of the map, because let's go back in here, measure, animate, change data fields. That's just for that. So maybe we have to do it from over here. So if I go to tools and setup, display, and there's, let's see, that's orientation for portrait and landscape there. And this is kind of one of the things that I'm having problems with, because things that you would think, and in fact, to be totally honest, I set the orientation of this out here earlier. I'm just not seeing where it's done now. Because when you come over here, we've got map detail, charts, what type of map we want to see, graphically, total, weather, measure, fuel. I don't know. Oh, maybe it's right here on setup. Track log, yeah. So right here we got track log, record. No, that's the track log. So that isn't it. Where was it? Anyway, I don't know. It's one of those things that I think the designers of this thing need to go back to the drawing board on a few things. However, let's take a look. When I touch and scroll, I still have the same map there. I'll figure it out and mention it when I get it in the airplane. So you'll notice right now that when I start scrolling, or when I touch this thing, it's bringing up information on whatever it is. So if I click on this airport, it'll bring up information on the airport. There is no, you'll notice if I come back over here, there is no airport information. So it's kind of, it's kind of crazy how some things I have to get from the map and some things I have to come over here. But if I go back over here to the map and say I want information on this airport, I can come down here and click on the airport, and it'll bring me up the frequencies, the runways, weather, information, all that kind of stuff on that particular airport. I can also click on, well, actually I can't. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. But if I come back over here, and you'll notice that it's giving me information on this airport, but because I've got all of this approach plate loaded over here, I can't really click on the Thomaston airport. So I can't get the Thomaston airport up to look at. So what I can do is I have to come back over here to my active flight plan, and then I can come down here to, well, it's removed Thomaston from my flight plan. It's interesting. So it only has the approach in here. Okay, so here's my Thomaston info. So if I click this, it'll bring up the same information, but I have to do it from my flight plan. So that's a little odd that I've got to do that, but watch what happens here. So to kind of show what we're looking at, we've got the flight plan loaded, we've got the chart up, and we're flying into SINFO here. I want to change my flight plan. I've canceled this. I don't like the weather over there, so I want to go somewhere else. So I'm just going to come up here, and we're going to go back to our flight list, and I'm going to go ahead and activate this flight plan instead. So we're going to say activate, and yes. You'll notice that it did not activate my flight plan. I'm on the active flight log, but it removed the entire flight log, or the flight plan that we had for shooting this approach, but it left SINFO because that's our direct to. And it's a little odd because if I hit direct to, it isn't active. It says that I can resume the flight plan or activate, but there's not really anything in here to activate anything. But you'll notice up here, right here, it says resume flight plan. Well, even though it's got a direct to of SINFO, if I hit resume flight plan, it will actually go and load the flight plan that I just loaded. I do not know the reason behind that. Direct to seems to be, and it'll do it here too. So watch, if I come in here and do a direct to, and let's say I load in KOPN because I need to get some information as to how far away it is. Well, this will give me, I can even activate it. This will give me Thomaston. If I come back over here and go to map, it has loaded direct to Thomaston. But now that I've got the information I want, I'm going to go back over here to my active flight plan, and we're going to hit the menu, and we're going to tell it to resume flight plan. And that will change us back to the flight plan that we loaded. So now if I go back to map, you can see that we're actually flying a different flight plan, which is here. So that is something to kind of deal with. Now, if I go direct to, and I come in here and I go to flight plan, this will let me just go direct to the one airport that I was trying to fly to. So all of the things that you need to have in here are here. It's just a matter of jumping around to a few of them to get to them. Now, the other thing, and I mentioned this, that in order to load the approach plate to something, you have to come into your active flight plan to do that. But from in here, I can go to en route charts. This is where I have to go to get my actual VFR, or if I want to go back out here, see, maybe menu, I can change this over to IFR low, and that'll bring up the IFR chart. So it's, fairly easy to do that. I'm going to come back over here again. We've got 3D vision. Now this is a pretty cool little thing. It gives me my current altitude, it shows me an airplane, gives me terrain. So this is kind of our synthetic vision on this thing. If I go down here to maps, I can change it to tapes instead of the round gauges, and it brings up the altitude tape and the airspeed tape. And then you've also got some other information down here, the nearest airport, or that's the airport that you're headed to. This is the nearest airport that if you needed to divert. And then you can click in these guys and change the settings in them. And then this lets you set an actual track, so you can kind of see where you're supposed to be headed. So this is all pretty cool, and also this kind of works with your approach. If you load an approach in, all of this stuff kind of changes with that. It also, if you go missed approach, it'll let you go and hit the button to go missed approach. So it's a pretty functional deal. If I go to tools, this is where we've got user waypoints. User waypoints, I thought maybe I could use user waypoints for storing my airport, my favorite airports, but the problem is when you go in here to create one, it'll only let you use Latin Lawn. It won't let you actually put in an airport identifier. So that kind of makes that useless for that particular purpose. But it would let me name it, and has most of my other stuff that I would want up there. Reference waypoints. This is coming off of a reference point to make that waypoint. So that really is, it's useful, but it's not as useful as it could be. The flight log, this thing, I'm not real sure what you have to do to get it on, because it's not as functional as what ForeFlight or Garmin has. I drove with this in my car. I don't know if it only starts logging once you get a certain altitude or something. But that's kind of something that I've still got to figure out. Weight and balance is pretty dysfunctional. VNav is pretty cool. I can go in and set my VNav, my altitudes on my approach, so that it alerts me when I get down to that altitude. If I go into setup, this is where we set up our display and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and connects and all that stuff. So for a first look at this thing, it is definitely a functional device. I love the big buttons, and easily typing things in and not having to sit and try to type and hit things that are just too small to touch. So I'm kind of digging all that. So right now what we're going to do is I'm going to go and see about getting this mounted in the Lockheed, and we're going to see if everything that I like about it is still likable once I get it the right distance away from me, and whether I can see it as I'm flying the airplane. So it's a really nasty day outside. We're not going to actually be flying the airplane, but we'll still put it in there and see as far as touching the buttons and doing everything, see how that goes.